I feel a great kinship with Jane. Part of that's probably just DNA. Part of it's because it turns out that we grew up in the same town in Long Beach, New York, and so she has a great deal of what we call in Yiddish sechel. She brings fun, not dread, to the subject of sex, and a combination of happiness and intelligence. And so that's, I just feel a strong connection with Jane, and I welcome her to be in our midst. Jane now lives in Northampton, and she's put her contact into the chat for those who want to reach out to her after. Her website is www.janefleischman.com. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jane. Take it away.
Okay. Sal and Sal were in bed one night. Sal says to Sal, "Sal, you never kiss me anymore." So Sal turns over, gives Sal a little peck on the cheek, turns back over, tries to go back to sleep. A couple of breaths later, Sal says, "Sal, you never touch me anymore." Sal sighs, turns over, gives Sal a little pat on the arm, turns back over and takes another couple of breaths. At which point Sal says, "Sal, you never bite me anymore." Sal jumps out of bed and Sal says, "What happened?" And Sal says, "I'm going to get my teeth." Anyway, that was it. That's all I'm going to do for jokes. Barbara, that was for you. If you weren't online before, Barbara was asking if I had any jokes, and Barbara had a great joke. But I just want to say thank you so much. Bruce, what a lovely introduction. And I feel like we're, siblings now. Landsman, maybe.
Landsman.
Yeah. And Joyce, thank you so much. What's that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Mishpacha.
Mishpacha, yes, we're definitely mishpacha. And Joyce, thanks to you also for entrusting me with all of you. And thanks to all of you for being here from the East Coast to the West Coast. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the work I do, some of the research and the challenges, and the opportunities for all of us to engage in a more full-hearted discussion about sex with older adults, but first with ourselves. Be thoughtful and mindful of who you are in this discussion, and also with our clients. And after I'm done, we'll have lots of time for Q&A, and if anything I say brings up a question or a comment or a disagreement or a conversation you'd like to have, I see Joan Ditzian is on here. You're one of my mentors, so take it away if you've got other ideas as well. But really, I'm so honored to be with all of you. Just type it in the chat box, and Bruce, I'm going to ask you to keep track of that and help me answer those when I finish my presentation, because I can't seem to do two things at once anymore. As a sexuality educator, I teach about sex, the ins and outs, literally, of sex in all its forms, and not just heterosexual intercourse. I'm talking about the wide and varied sexual lives that we as humans have continued to refine throughout millennia. And Bruce referred to Dennis Daly's work, and Daly talks about circles of sexuality, intimacy and sensuality, response and desire, sexual health and reproduction, identity and attraction, abuse and consent. And I came to this work late in life. And as Bruce said, I got my PhD at Widener University in human sexuality. I just finished 4 years ago at the age of 62. And while other students in my class were interested in teaching sex to younger populations, I saw that older adults were living longer, loving longer, and their sexual lives were considered taboo. So it's a population that matters to me, not only because it's underrepresented in the research and because of ageism and all of the various extenuating parts of that, but also because it's my own future. And you know, when I was still in grad school, I don't know if you remember these things, they call them practicum or clinical applications of the research and the philosophy and the theory that you're learning. I did my practicum at Kitte House. Anybody from the Bronx here? Anybody?
From the Bronx.
All right, from the Bronx. So
My grandparents
you know what
were
Kitte
there.
House is in. It's a pretty cool place. And I did my practicum with Dr. Laura Singer-Magdoff. Some of you might have actually known her. She was in practice as a clinical psychologist and a sex therapist for more than 50 years. She just celebrated her 100th birthday and just recently died. But she had intellectual vitality, a sense of humor, and great style right up until the end. Right before one of her groups, she pulls me aside and she gestures toward one of the men in the group and tells me he's having a really hard time right now emotionally. He was in his late 80s at that point. His wife was in an Alzheimer's unit and he was having difficulty getting used to it because he missed her so much, he loved her so much, and he was really lonely without her. Now, as I listened, and I'm a little bit ashamed to admit, but I realized that until that moment, that very moment, I hadn't really given any thought to the deep and complex emotional lives of people much older than myself. You know, I'd grown up with older adults, parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, but I hadn't thought about their feelings of deep sadness or loss or regret or jealousy or longing. Now, how had I begun to do this work and not realize that these people still felt emotions I associated only with younger people? And it made me wonder, how is it that old people have so much wisdom and young people so much power? And the questions I ask myself these days are echoed in the voices of older adults I spend my time with. Is my pelvic floor dropping?
Just don't know me what that big box is.
What?
I think maybe we could mute people, Bruce. That might be good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Would everyone just kindly mute themselves? That would be helpful.
So, is my pelvic floor dropping? Is an adult diaper in my future? Does a lack of estrogen mean I'm resigned to finding stray facial hairs every morning? Is this my new normal? And what do we know about sex and older adults? I understand if it's hard to talk about sex and intimacy, especially across the lifespan. Adding the prospect of dementia, it complicates the conversation even further. But if we can't imagine this life for elders, if we can't talk about the possibility of sex and romance with the clients who come to us, then we're denying them of their lives of fullness, dignity, and pleasure at a time when they're entrusting their very lives with us. Now, sure, you're probably thinking it's easy for Jane to say she teaches this stuff, but how do I bring this up with my clients? It might be inappropriate. I haven't had enough training. No one's ever asked me this before. So I get it, you all, I really do. But one thing I know for sure is that you can start wherever you are. Have you ever had a client ask you a question and you really wanted to help them but just didn't know where to start? Start by being what I call askable. One thing I know is that it's really about how you present yourself to your clients. And, you know, when I used to do face-to-face presentations, remember those before COVID, before March? It wasn't the presentation or the questions in the large group that I loved as much as the after presentation and the after group questions. Or in your case, I don't know, the before group. I enjoyed all of those little moments with people. And one time, this older guy comes up to me. He might have been in his early 80s. I'd just given my talk, and he comes up very sheepishly, and he sort of very quietly leans in and says, "Am I a perv?" And I thought, okay, one of the things I learned in grad school is always follow up a question with another question. So I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, I like younger women." And I thought, okay. Another thing I learned was make sure that people are legally of age to have consensual sex. So I said, "Well, like how young?" because I'm thinking like under 21, this is not going to be cool. He says, I don't know, like in their 40s, 50s. I said, you're fine. Another time, a woman in her 50s says to me, she comes up to me after a session I did at a senior center. She says, every time I have anal play, I find that I have to go to the bathroom for what it seems like hours the next day. So again, I knew that she was asking something really personal. And entrusting me in that moment. So I knew that I had to really both validate what she had asked me, because people don't talk about sex, they certainly don't talk about anal sex. And I took out what I use a lot for my demonstrations, a vulva puppet. And I wish I had brought it to my office today, but it's this beautiful velvet and satin puppet. It's about this big, and it's gorgeous. And we kind of did a little geography class together. And we talked about why that might be. And so I guess I want to begin today by giving you a little bit about what we know from the research. And for Barb and other people, I think Yosef, are you going to be doing that talk as well? Don't worry about taking big notes on this. I'll be happy to send you my notes, okay? So I want to start with some of the research that some you might know and some you may not be that familiar with. You probably all know about the Harvard study of adult development. They've been tracking the lives of the same group of adults since 1938. The big surprise in their findings is that the one thing in life that brings people the most happiness is connection, relationships. Now, they weren't talking specifically about sexual relationships, and I'll get to that in a moment. But it also turns out that the people who were most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 also happened to be the happiest at age 80. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, in terms of sex research, Dr. John De La Mater, who was an eminent sex researcher from University of Wisconsin-Madison, found that older adults are having and enjoying sex well into their 80s. From my anecdotal research, I know well into their 90s, but this is from the empirical data. And much of the prior sexuality research on older adults was focused only on their medical problems, like medications and hormone levels and illnesses. But that missed so much and only described part of the entire human experience. But what John De La Mater and his colleagues found was astounding. The major influences they found on the stirrings of the loins of old people are threefold: good physical and mental health, the presence of a sexual partner, and positive attitudes about sex. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Beverly Whipple. She wrote that great book about 20 years ago about the G-spot. We love Beverly Whipple. She's very cool. And she was at Rutgers for many years. And she lives in New Jersey. She's been a pioneer sex researcher on women's sexual health and responses. And she was the first author on a big study of the health benefits of sexual expression. And among their many findings was, and I'll give you three, one, that regular sexual expression can prevent heart disease and the complications from heart disease. And if you just heard the report this morning about chocolate, chocolate is also good for your heart, just saying. Number two, that regular sexual expression can help reduce the risks of both breast cancer and prostate cancer. And three, which is most interesting to me, is that sexual stimulation can alleviate chronic pain. And orgasm, now for those who experience orgasm, and again, I'm not saying that everybody experiences their sexuality in the same way, but for those who experience orgasm, orgasm produces the greatest increase in pain relief by reducing endorphins and hormones like oxytocin that can raise our thresholds to pain. Now, I don't really want you to quote me, but next time your partner says, I have a headache, you might say, well, Dr. Fleischman said it's, okay, anyway. Most of these studies, however, are about heterosexual sex. In my own research on older adults in same-sex relationships, I found that positive relationships were directly connected with sexual satisfaction. So what's all this research saying? Well, first of all, it's saying that old people are having sex. Secondly, that it's good for their health. And three, they're having a pretty good time. So why does the rest of the world put an expiration date on it just because of being old? And you know that old adage that youth is wasted on the young. Well, among the benefits of being old are precisely the ingredients that are needed for a deep and intimate sexual life: openness, authenticity, and a real appreciation for connection. I often tell older adults when they talk to me about issues like body image, you know, all of the media will show you young bodies and their, you know, flat abs and, you know, no sags and no wrinkles. You know, you don't have any of this stuff in the ads. And I say to people, you know, when you're lying down in bed a quarter of an inch away from someone else, they're not looking at your wrinkles and your sags. They're looking into your heart. They're looking into your soul. And if we allow ourselves to see our elders as fully human, ultimately we'll be making room for our own sexual futures as well. And I'm aware that, you know, many of us may be seen as elders in this room, in this meeting today. And I understand that your clients may see you as an elder, but I also want you to think about how you can make room both in your own lives as well as others. So what are the challenges? Well, first of all, younger adult sexuality and their challenges have been endlessly documented, thought about, projected onto large screens and small screens like this. But what about older adult sexuality and their challenges? Well, we know that the inner lining of the vaginal canal may become thin and less lubricated, causing pain with friction. We know that erections may be slow or non-existent. And we know that dementia and other cognitive impairments can drastically alter personality. We need to consider situations I've encountered, like a family member who's fearful that their mom's new boyfriend is out to fleece their mom, even though she seems head over heels in love with him. Or an unmarried, older, interracial couple who want to deepen their relationship, but their friends look askance at them when they're holding hands. Or a transgender woman who's afraid to be herself because the senior living community she just moved into was just taken over by a conservative religious organization. This kind of fear and lack of information may be a key to the whole problem. You know, one woman came up to me again after a talk. She wanted to know how to have sex with her husband when his penis no longer gets erect. She asked me, how do I even begin to think about bringing a vibrator into my bed after 50 years of marriage? Another woman who'd lost her husband of 67 years asked whether she might be able to have a relationship with another woman because of the scarcity of men in her life. And we can talk about Lisa Diamond's work on sexual fluidity later if you're interested. Such brave questions, and they deserve to be dignified. The first thing I always do is I thank people for their courage and their honesty. It also gives me some time to think about how to craft my answer, because I'm grateful, not just for their questions, but for the hope it gives me. It offers me something, and then I offer them an open heart, because it's vulnerable stuff. And I always ask people to look deeper inside themselves, to focus on who they themselves see themselves as, not what the rest of the world might assume. I don't know about you, but sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm a little surprised, because in my mind, I think of myself at a different age. And there's actually some really interesting research on body image and the age you think you're at inside and how sexually satisfied you are. But we can talk about that later. I ask people to look inside themselves, and I offer them the latest research and accessible resources. For instance, for painful intercourse, I like to use the term outer course. I did not make this up. This is a term a lot of people use in our field. And it refers to any kind of sexual behavior that can create pleasure without penetration. Use your imagination. For dementia, I let people know that we need to do better assessments and consults and conversations, particularly when people are living in senior living communities which means training, which means conversations, which means boundaries, and it means discussions about consent. These are not conversations people generally have, whether people are older or younger. And I believe that sexual freedom must be extended to every one of us of any class, disability, culture, ethnicity, gender identity, orientation, nationality, political persuasion, race, religion, or age. Don't forget about it. So let me just wrap up by saying it's time we take a broader approach toward the curious and consenting older adults who want to live full and complete sexual lives, especially those people seeking your wise counsel in creating more fulfilling lives for themselves. Very few people have addressed it in a consistent way. I just want to tell you one quick story about Alex and Jan. Alex was 95 and Jan was 92 when they met and fell in love while living at an assisted living facility. They were both diagnosed with dementia. One day, Alex's son walks in on them enjoying a sexual moment in the privacy of Alex's bed. The son was enraged and beseeched the staff to never leave Alex and Jan alone together again. Alex's son moved Alex out of the facility, and as a result, Jan stopped eating, lost 21 pounds, and was treated for dehydration and depression. Jan sat next to a window looking and waiting for Alex to return. That story was just heartbreaking for me when I heard it first. And that situation could have been avoided if clearly defined discussions and values had been translated into policy and staff training, family members, and to the couple themselves. I offer that to you because the more we can openly discuss older adult sexuality, the safer, happier, and healthier all of us will be. So as life planners, I'm sure you work to help your clients unfold their futures in so many ways, emotionally, financially, spiritually, physically, offering them tips, activities to promote new ways to be in the world. But how often does their sexual life become part of the new constellation of their life? And what if they've been sexually frustrated for years and want to fulfill a lifelong desire to become sexually satisfied? I propose a new ideal for the sexual unfolding of older adults for whom we are taking responsibility. And so I'm calling for courage. Are you willing to tackle this taboo topic and look at your clients fully, understand their cultures, their backgrounds, their religious beliefs, their fears, their hopes? Are you willing to be inclusive of a range of sexual expression, as well as their privacy? Are you prepared to look at the dignity of sexual expression that addresses consent and safety, pleasure and health? It's perhaps the greatest secret of our lives that older adults have longing and lust, and that sexuality is just another part of who we and they are. How we begin to untangle these challenges has far-reaching implications for all of us. So I suggest we write this new future together that clients today and tomorrow will be forever grateful.